What's going on, guys? It's Ryan back at it again. So today we're going to be doing a little bit of a different video here. Today we're going to be talking about the new Mac Pro. Now, I was watching Snazzy Labs' video of the teardown and whatnot, and I've also just been seeing a lot of noise on the media about how much this thing costs, and I am here to kind of explain why this computer costs so much, and also I'm about to explain why I don't feel it's overpriced for the workstation hardware you're getting compared to the major competition from Dell and HP. So let's just go ahead and dive right in. So to go ahead and test this out, I went on all three configuration pages for these products and I selected a common spec. So I tried what I did first of all is I configured the Mac Pro, and then I went on Dell and HP's website and I tried to get their configurations as close as I possibly could to the hardware that's in here. Now, Apple does have access to hardware that other manufacturers don't. In other words, they use different SKUs of Intel processors versus standard off-the-shelf components that other manufacturers are using, and so it's a little bit hard to get parity there. However, I managed to get really close, and so we are going to be looking at that today. So let's go ahead and start out with how I built this Mac Pro. Now we are looking at a 2.5 gigahertz 28 core Intel Xeon W processor. This is the highest end configuration you can get in here. You can see that costs an additional $7,000 over the standard configuration. We are looking at 384 gigabytes. That would be 6 DIMMs of 64 gigabyte capacity of DDR4 ECC RAM. That costs an additional $6,000 over the base price. Moving down, we have two Radeon Pro Vega 2s. Of course, I wasn't able to match these on the Dell and HP sites because these graphics cards are specific to the Mac. However, I chose some Radeon Pro graphics cards that I think will be pretty close or almost equivalent to the Mac Pro. So there's that. Down here, I selected 2 terabyte SSD storage. Of course, the Mac Pro has 2 SSD slots, and so this 2 terabyte SSD storage really means that there are 2 1 terabyte drives in RAID 0. And so I tried to replicate that with these as well. I didn't add any other extra options because that's kind of irrelevant for the comparison I'm trying to do here. Anyway, so there's the spec of the Mac Pro. I went over here to Dell's site and I configured this Precision 7920. This is a high-end workstation, again something comparable to the Mac Pro, something that the Mac Pro is competing with directly. So as you can see here, I scrolled down and went for the Xeon Platinum 8180, which is again a 28 core 2.5 gigahertz processor, pretty close to the Mac Pro, so that's the reason I picked that. Now you can see that that actually cost us about let's see, about $10,000 more versus the base price. So there you go there. Scrolling down again, I chose these dual Radeon Pro WX7100 graphics cards. Again, the Mac Pro graphics cards actually have a lot more video memory than those, but again, this is the highest end Radeon Pro graphics card that I could fix, or that I could select, so that's what I went with. Scrolling down to the memory, again, I just tried to match it. 384 gigs, 6 times 64 gigs of ECC memory there. You can see that cost us an additional $5,600 to almost $6,000 extra, depending on what you went with over the 64. Scrolling down there, I just tried to match the SSDs, so I went with 2 1 terabyte solid state drives here. Again, that's about it. I just tried to match that stuff, and again, I didn't select anything else there. So with that said, of course there's the summary, but that came out to $22,608. So again, that is a little bit cheaper than the Mac Pro, but in my opinion, for somebody who's spending this much on a workstation, that is a negligible amount. So it's pretty darn close. Now if we go over to HP's website and look at their Z6 G4 workstation, which is again pretty similar to these workstations over here, I went ahead and selected the exact same spec, got an 8280 processor because the 8180 wasn't available, but this is their 28 core option on HP's website. It's actually clocked a little higher and is probably a tiny bit more expensive because of that, but again, that's close as I could get. Now with the HP, you do have an option of selecting a secondary processor, but these two machines don't offer that, so I decided not to go for that, just for the sake of in a fair comparison. Again, down here, same thing for the RAM. That cost us an additional, let's see, over 32 gigs. It cost us an additional $10,000. So again, same as the Dell, and the Mac actually only cost us an extra $6,000 for $384. So there you go. Scrolling down again, I just decided to go for 2 terabyte PCIe SSD because, again, that's the closest I could get. And I also selected the WX7100s as well. Got 2 of those. So again, that came out to $26,507. So a little bit more expensive than the Dell and just a tiny bit more expensive than the Mac Pro. So with all that said, what exactly does this mean? Well, again, all these workstations are priced pretty much identically, with a small margin for error. Again, I have a feeling that these Radeon Pro graphics cards in the Mac Pro are going to be more powerful than the options you can get here. But again, this Mac Pro, pricing-wise, is right in line with the other workstation competition from Dell and HP. And so that's the reason I really don't believe this thing is overpriced. Now, we can get into a whole nother can of worms with this machine in terms of arguing over whether spending the $6,000 for the base model versus building, let's say, an AMD Threadripper PC in terms of value. That's not what I'm trying to get at here. Again, this is a workstation, and so it has, like I said, workstation hardware with ECC RAM and server-grade Intel Xeons and stuff like that I don't think really should be compared to a consumer grade PC, especially one that you can build yourself, because they are making margins off this stuff because these are pre-built computers. But anyways, in a vacuum, compared to the other workstation competition, I think this Mac Pro is priced right in line, and so that's why I don't believe it's overpriced. Now, I do want to talk a little bit more about the memory, because that's the thing that I have seen people complain about the most. They're saying, this ridiculous charge for memory, like if you want to go for 1.5 terabytes here, that's an extra, I think it's like $25,000 over the base. And so that's where you're getting this, $52,000 maxed out Mac Pro. A lot of it is in the memory cost. But while they are making margins on this, I'm fairly certain, well, actually, let's do the math here. So we can see 384 gigs is costing us an extra $6,000 over the base, whereas over here, if we go to, we are looking at about the same. So it's an extra $5,600, $5,700-ish, depending on which sticks you go with here for the 64. About an extra $6,000 there too. So if you compare that to the Mac Pro, that's exactly the same amount extra they're charging for this extra memory. Now, if we actually do the math here is a 1 times 64 gigabyte stick. Of course, there are 6 of those in these computers. So if we go ahead and do the math here, these babies, those are $410 each. So if we punch that into the calculator here, times 6, we are looking at about $2,400-ish. So you can see that both manufacturers are making a little bit of a margin off this memory here. But like I said, with all 3 of these computers, if you do order them, you can just order them with the base memory and upgrade it yourself. With that said, as far as how much they're overcharging for this memory, again, it's about the same across the board. I believe the HP is even more of a difference here. If we scroll down to the memory, they are charging an astonishing $10,000 over the base here. So that's a little ridiculous in my opinion, but like I said, that's just what these things cost. Now, if we wanted to go with the maximum memory option here for $19,000 extra, we are looking at, well, I guess with that, this would be $25,000 extra. Here is a 128 gigabyte stick, and you see one of those costs $1,800, which is ridiculous, but again, that's how much these things cost. We're looking at $22,000 for that. So again, in terms of raw hardware costs, that's pretty darn close. Like again, it really just, it isn't that ridiculous, and all these manufacturers are charging about the same for that. So you can see if we wanted to go for 1.5 terabytes here, that's an extra $40,000 on the Dell side. So these boys are costing even more, even though, again, it's the same 128 gigabyte sticks. So Dell is charging even more than Apple for that memory upgrade. The point I'm trying to make here is that when we're comparing this server grade hardware and we're comparing the Mac Pro to other workstations in its class, its price is not ridiculous. It's actually fairly well priced compared to the competition. So that's pretty much the only point I'm trying to make here. Of course, me being the Apple fan that I am, I will admit that I am a little bit biased, but in this case I believe I am speaking the truth. with this Mac Pro, you're also getting, Mac OS. You're getting the beautiful design of this case that you're just really probably not getting on this side. I mean, I'm sure this thing's fine too. Of course, I'm a Dell fan as well, but I mean, I cannot see these workstations being as well thought out on the inside as the Mac Pro is. And so, with that said, like I said, that's my argument. I don't think the Mac Pro is all that overpriced, and so that's about it. Thank you guys for watching. See you later.